Hello there, this is Mike aka Prophet Song. How you guys doing? Glad to meet you. This is my stream. Detailed truth. Stream where we discuss truth, how to ascertain it. In my darkest night, you've been my pin of light. In my brightest day, in my fire cloud show. Yeah, yeah. Our theme song. And here's the look for the truth, look for the light, look for the fire. And the subject today is going to be authenticity. And when you're looking for truth, you got to look for something real. And in order to do that, you got to be able to discern between what is real and what is false. And that's going to be basically learning the authentic, studying the authentic, so that you can determine what is wrong. It's that simple. For instance, the guys at the um, bank tellers, you try to get a 20 by them, a phony 20. You'll get caught. Why? Because they are trained in how to identify the authentic. They're not trained how to identify counterfeits. They know the authentic money so well that they can spot the phony. And that's where you got to be in this life. You got to know the truth so well that you can spot the fraudulent. And that's the way it goes. Um, and that's what we're talking about today, learning the real so you can determine the false. Too many times people are looking at the false. Because they're doing that, they can't determine the authentic. Do never, ever focus on something you know not to be true. So the key is to find out one thing that is authentic and study it. So you know it so well that nobody can throw a fake around you. And that's something that in our culture we're lacking. In the world, they're lacking. That ability to look at one thing, find the authentic thing, study it, learn from it, examine it, so when the false comes, you know what it is. For instance, we all have friends. We have good friends, and we have phony friends, or friends that are just friends because they can get stuff off you, right? This happened with my dad. My dad, tell you the way he was actually a generous man. And once he liked you, he'd give you the shirt off his back. Because it was like that, a lot of people wanted to be friends with him because they could get stuff off him. And that's the way it is when you're good hearted people. Everybody wants to get close to you to get stuff. It's called greed. How do I know a true friend? He stays with you. You have nothing. Good friend wants to be around you just because of you, not because he gains stuff. Or he treats you out to a good time. That's not your friend. Right? So how do you know a good friend? First of all, you examine those that are around you when you have nothing and you actually have nothing to give. Those are actually friends. Those that are around you that are there only when you have stuff, they're not your friends. For some reason, in the culture in which I live, there's a lot of people that hang around only people that want to get something off of them. And you examine them, you talk to them. The reason they're around those type of people is because they are the same type of people. See, two do not walk together unless they be agreed. All right. So if you want to draw real friends, you have to be a real friend. Right? You can't be greedy or just befriend people because you can get something off of them. Because if you're a phony, you're going to attract phonies. And if you're around the phony often enough, you're going to think it's real. That's why you got a lot of people thinking relationships are nonsense because they spend most of their time hanging around something that's not real. And that's the key is hanging around something authentic, not phony. Right? So you know a real friend by grabbing that one friend you know is real and studying him. Right? General characteristics, not specific, because each individual is actually a little different. You ain't going to get somebody exactly the same, but there's going to be characteristics he has as a genuine friend. Study him, examine, learn him. Right? Anybody that's not having that general characteristics are not a friend. It's that simple. You've learned the authentic so well that you can spot the fake. Boy, with that is everything, but nobody wants to study authentic. For instance, if you're in a good church with a good man of God, and you know he's a good man of God, get close to him, study him, study his teachings. Right? Because one thing that happens in the church, it deals with false teachings and false wisdom. They don't get to know God. So through the blood of Jesus Christ, you have access into his very presence. You get to know God personally. Right? And that's the key to not being fooled by a phony preacher or a false teacher. It's know your God. Right? Jesus said in the last days there will be those that come to you in his name, false teachers. Though outwardly they would look like sheep, but inwardly they're ravenous wolves. You will know them by the fruit. Jesus said you will know them by the fruit. What's a fruit? Fruit is a product. That ministry is producing something. Right? Well, the Spirit of God working in them will produce something. And that's something, a teaching, another, how to identify what is produced. For instance, a good training program will produce good workers. If you got somebody going from a trade school that don't know their trade, it's not a real trade school. It's not authentic. It's just taking people's money and ripping them off. It's not an actual authentic trade school. For instance, the Institute of Higher Learning, you would come out of the institute with a knowledge of what you went to school for. I've been around some college graduates with degrees that had no idea, didn't have a clue the very subject that they went and got a degree for. It's been like that way for years. They're not authentic colleges. They're businesses. They're not authentic houses of learning because they would know. They would have knowledge. You see it across the board. You know what is their businesses? They make money off of you paying tuition. And the reward for you paying the price is getting a piece of paper, which everybody puts a high value on. Right? Because you have to not give into the validation of men or the system. Because the system is worthless as far as validating authenticity, because it's so corrupted with greed. See, with the collegiate system, right? You see, AOC went to, and others in the political establishment went to colleges, constitutional law. But you see them making decisions, they have no concept of what the Constitution actually says. It becomes evident in their speeches. For instance, there's one speech I heard um, by a prominent politician, quote unquote Christian, and she was questioned about the separation of church and state. She made one statement that blew my mind away. She said, "Well, it is mentioned in the Constitution, but that's an error right there. The Constitution states Congress may enact no law endorsing free religion or hindering it. So, in the face of religion, it is totally neutral. It is illegal to enact any law that regulates it. Right? The separation of church and state isn't mentioned in the Constitution. There's a Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. As soon as they mention church and state, it's not then it's not a biblical, it's not a constitutional discussion. The discussion, the Communist Manifesto. I know that I studied, read the Constitution. I didn't go to school for it. I read it and understood what I read. As the key is to know the authentic. So when they threw the false, I knew she didn't know what she was talking about because I read the Constitution. I know what it says. As the key is, you got to learn to read for yourself. Right. For instance, during the presidential campaign, I heard one um, quote unquote candidate during the primaries come up with a biblical basis for endorsing gay marriage. That's not in the Bible. The verse he took was out of context. He was referring to an Old Testament prophet who taught the law of Moses. The law of Moses does not endorse gay marriage at all. Why? Because I studied the Bible. I studied that prophet. I studied Torah. I know the authentic. So when he came up with something was false, I knew it was false because I knew the authentic. Right? And that's the way it is. Once you know the authentic, you can't be fooled by the false. And when you're dealing with truth, that's the thing is to know what is real, what is true, and to stick by it. Know it like the back of your hand. It's too many. You can't be swayed by emotions. So two things you can't be swayed by when you're judging authenticity: the paperwork and endorsement of men. Why? All men are liars. God alone is true. In one degree or another, all men are liars. So because all men are liars, you can't rely on any paperwork or endorsement that comes from any man-made institution. It's like clockwork. For instance, years ago, my nephew got in trouble with the law, and a friend of my sister's ex-boyfriend, who was a real nut job, always pulling con jobs, got him a lawyer. Now, right then and there, you should have been skeptical because two do not walk together unless they be agreed. A dishonest person most likely will recommend a dishonest lawyer because like character draws like character. Well, anyhow, he gave her a whole lot of hogwash, a double talk. Want to follow up the case, blah, 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 this, that, the other thing. Now, I try to talk, listen, you can take this further because of this law, that law, that. I studied the Constitution. I read it. I've been researching these things, right? And she got all indignant with me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, got away from her. She referred to this guy as an expert because he had a degree. He was lying to her. Um, but he was going to, her word was going to go above her brother who done research and speaks in terms of love. She put value on something that was worthless, not actually being able to ascertain the authentic. The guy wasn't an actual lawyer, he was a charlatan. He wasn't interested in her welfare or the welfare of my nephew. He didn't want to pursue the case because there wasn't enough money involved. So she lied to him so he can drop it. Um, an authentic lawyer. You know how you know an authentic lawyer? They're more interested in justice than they are in making a buck. You see, lawyers like that. Yeah, I'll take the case. I don't care. It's right. I may or may not be in. There are a few out there right out in the open that are like that. I'm mentioning the names, but I'm going to get attacked because it's like this world has lost the ability to ascertain the authentic. That's the way an authentic lawyer, a real lawyer, not only knows the law, but he has a hunger for justice. That's a real lawyer. Most lawyers you see nowadays have a hunger for money. And as soon as you have that hunger for money, your perceptions of justice is distorted. Whoever pays you, that's who the law goes for. And they distort things in that way. So you want authenticity. Don't look or follow degrees. Remember, all men are liars. God alone is true. Right? And degrees from universities are not based on knowledge, they're based on money. So you don't give them any credit. Right? For instance, just because a guy has a degree doesn't mean they have good character. You see that all the time. That's why you have to research it. Like for instance, one of the reasons I see that the media is acting up and they're not being right, because I remember a time when the media was actually authentic. There was a time when the media made the money selling papers at newsstands, right? For a little bit of money. The public had to buy the papers in order to support the media, right? They served the public because it was the public putting the money into them, right? So everything they went through was true. Read the paper, and they would go through integrity checks and honesty because that's what the public wanted. They were out to serve the public, right? The media hasn't been like that for quite some time. They're not taking money from the public; they're taking money from special interest groups. So they're not into research. They're not into integrity. I think the media died around 1960, somewhere around there. That's when the mass media started beginning because there was a transfer from the printed medium, which was supported by the people, right, into the mass market media. At first, it was supported by companies, endorsements, right. So then, once it started being endorsed by endorsements, whoever the company owners were the ones who supported the media. So they did what was ever in the interest of the companies. That grew to be corporations. So now they're giving the news broadcast in corporations you can't trust, but not actual journalists. It's been distorted. Actual journalists are concerned about one thing: the truth. That's all they're concerned about. We haven't seen those in a while. There's a few I can name. As soon as I name them, I'm going to get attacked. Um, but the way you notice them, they have a hunger for the truth. They are not going to go with the media. They're not going to go with it. They are mavericks. They'll go against the tide. Right? In a world where everything's corrupted, truth sayers are the journalists. It hasn't been that way for a long time. So how are you going to tell these people? How are you going to tell which one of the journalists are real? You got to know the authentic. That's why you got to research yourself. For instance, like the congressional debates and talks and discussions, Congress is actually televised on C-SPAN. You can listen to the debates. You can look into it. They even have YouTube channels. They're covered. You can actually see the replay of the actual processions. You don't have to listen to the news media. You can listen to what they're actually saying. You know what happened when you listen to what you're actually saying behind closed doors? The fronts are down. They're actually debating, seeing what's going on. You see the authentic. And once you get into seeing the actual debates, you don't listen to the media because you see what's actually going on. And that's a lot of truth. right? Because you can't listen to them, right? And the truth is right where it's always been, right before your eyes. For instance, I've seen authentic doctors. All we have now is a medical industry, a medical industrial complex. There are no doctors left. The doctor was someone that was interested in your health and your healing. You became before everyone else, right? Because they made the money off of families. They made the money off of workers. There was no insurance. They actually paid out of pocket. And they were friends of the family. They knew the family. They knew your brothers, they knew your sisters, they knew your parents, they knew your grandparents, right? They were guardians of your health. Why? Because that's how they made their money. Now, they're getting, these doctors are part of a system, and they get their money from corporate America. That's why they can't be trusted, because if the higher ups say they have to do a certain thing, most of them will do it. If they can give you a medical treatment or do damage to you and they're pushing it, they'll push it. The few that are resisting are usually telling the truth because they took a hypocritical oath and they meant it. You want to know the authentic? Those that are willing not to harm people, and they go to the extreme not to harm people to the point where they're actually putting their jobs in danger. That's authenticity. We see a lot of authentic doctors. They're fired. They lose their jobs. Why? Because they won't hurt anyone. That's an authentic doctor. They take an oath not to harm, and that's the first responsibility. And they believe it because they actually care about people. Those authentic doctors. They want to say, no, I will not harm. I will not put out this treatment because that's going to do harm to my patient. A true doctor defends the health and welfare of the patient. A true doctor doesn't go along with political narratives. A true doctor actually stands against the tide on behalf of their patient. It's called genuine. I don't see anybody like that anymore. Hardly anybody. They do. They're few to rise up, and they're not afraid. They'll take the lumps. That's a true doctor, right? The doctors are just going with whatever's said. Media narratives. They're not real doctors. The real doctors are the ones that defend your lives. In order to know who they are, you got to know the truth. How do you know the truth? You got to study the authentic. You got to look for authentic. For instance, there's a way you test authenticity. Gold is purified in fire. You get a piece of gold, you want to know if it's real. Melt it. Melt it. Huh? When you start putting the fire to it, false paint will come right off. You look at it, it's like, that's not gold. Melt it. Right? Because the electroplating comes right off when you melt it. You see what's actually there. Sometimes you need fire. That's why you got to put things to the test. You put things to the test, you test in authenticity. Right? For instance, um, and the hardest thing to tell right now, as far as authenticity goes, is political leaders. Because there's been a system in place for a long time that deals with special interest groups and not a guardian of the people. And that's what a president or a leader is, one who guards the people. You see an example of this in Japan. Japan, right? In this pandemic, they got vaccines and they put them to the test before they got to the people. They refused to put it out until their people actually tested it. That's a government that was looking out for the welfare of the people. The purpose of government is to protect the people. And the Japanese government's been doing it. They've been doing it for a long time. They go against the flow. That's why they're taking a whole lot of flack because they stop. They may be right or they may be wrong. I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong. I'm just saying what they did. They did do that. But I respect somebody who's going to take heat out of protecting the people. So you want to see a true leader or an authentic leader? Look for someone who actually cares about the people, not looking to line their own pockets. And you find them. They're in the political system, but you have to look for them. Those are the ones who are putting their butts on the line, taking positions that are not popular, at risk of losing certain groups because what they say is actually right. And we haven't had, I don't remember a single president that fit the bill. I mean, all of them, for one reason or another, are swayed by polls or public opinion or catering to the special interest groups that put them into power, um, not catering to the people. And that's what a true leader does. He caters to the people. He serves the people. He doesn't serve special interest groups. All right? Do you see authenticity? The system, like, it's hard to tell. That's why you got to research, find out what goes on behind it. Um, and they are out there, and they do serve support, but you got to look for them. That's the whole thing you have to look for. You got to test the waters, test authenticity. For instance, my father used to make chili sauce. Yeah. And how we attested that it was authentically hot, he called me over. Hey, Mikey, I got something for you. Close your eyes. Close my eyes. Open your mouth. Open my mouth. You put the hot sauce, you put the chili on my tongue. If I started screaming and running around like a nut, he knew it was hot enough. He tested it before he put it out. It's authentically hot. It was verified, you know? But especially stuff you put in your body, because you don't want to put in your body a phony product. You want to put in your body something that's authentic. You don't want to buy a vitamin supplement that is 90% chemical and with a little bit of vitamin actually in it. You want to know something that you can absorb into your body to do you some good. You got to know the authentic. Um, it's funny because it's the same way with relationships. You want a good relationship, you want a good marriage, right? You go to somebody who has a good marriage. You go to a couple that's been happily wed for a few years and you learn from them. You watch them. Don't ask them any questions, watch them. Study the authenticity of a truly loving marriage. That's what you're going for. That's where it should be. That's what you go for. Right? You don't go to the educational people who go get degrees from paying somebody. They go to the school, pay tuition, get a piece of paper. It doesn't mean they're an expert, so just ignore them unless you actually know them. And that's one of the key features because years ago, I had an older sister try to give me fraudulent advice on relationships. Right? She kept on trying to give me advice. I kept on saying no, ignoring her, ignoring her, ignoring her. And she got mad at me and says, "Why are you ignoring me?" I was like, "I was trying to avoid this conversation, but since you pushed it, Mag, I know your entire life. I know when you applied it in your own life and it never worked. You're giving me information and instruction that hasn't worked in your own life. I'm not taking it because I want a good relationship." She got mad. She got furious. How did I tell the authenticity? She had authentically bad relationships. Yeah, I studied her relationships and they were authentically bad. So I'm not going to take anything we want from them because I want authentically good relationships. She got mad. Right. Um, Let me take degrees. Right. For instance, you listen to music. Music and art is one thing nobody actually follows degrees on. right? I mean, who goes to a concert and wants the educational experience of the musician? You go to a concert because you like the person's music, right? Yeah, Paul McCartney and the Beatles. Paul McCartney went to music school. John Lennon was an artist. He went to art school, right? Ringo Starr learned drums on his own. He never went to school. George, I think you learned. I'm not sure about George. George may have learned everything by ear. I wouldn't know. Um, but Jimi Hendrix, if I went to see him, he doesn't have any degree in music. He learned everything by ear. But you don't even think of that when you go into a concert. You go to a concert to see John Lennon. You're not looking for his educational experience. You're just looking for a good musician. You go into a gallery to see an artist. You're not looking for the artist's credentials. You're going because you've seen his art and you know he's good. It's funny, art and music, it just doesn't apply. It's like it's ignored most of the time. But it shouldn't be that way. For instance, I'm going to judge a lawyer not by his paperwork, but by the fact that he has a fire for justice and he wins cases honestly. That's authentic. I don't care what law school you went to. Especially with lawyers, research them, talk to them, get to know them, and not fronts. Look for the hunger for justice. That's what you tell a real lawyer. You know, same way with judges. You want to ascertain which judge is an authentic judge. Ignore the education. Look for something in their character. You want to see a hunger for justice. That's a true judge. Because judges come from lawyers too. You have to be a lawyer before you're a judge. So they're actually the same qualifications. Um, but know the authenticity. For instance, the Bible says, know those who minister among you. You don't take a stranger, somebody you don't know, put him behind the pulpit and expect him to do a good job. Know him, know his character, know his heart, know his mind, know him. There should be no strangers out there in the pulpits. Oh, he's a big name preacher. Big deal. Yeah, Paul had to deal with super apostles. They were big name preachers too, and they're all false. You can't go by names. You can't go by reputations. You want to know the authenticity of a preacher? Know your God. Right? It says you will know them by the fruit. Yeah, okay. Who's following that preacher? Follow. Look, spend some time with people that are following certain preachers, and you see the fruit in their lives. Because if they're authentic, they would draw authentic saints. If they're inauthentic, they produce saints that ain't even walking right. It's a way to bear fruit because you can't go to a minister and actually know every minister, but you can ascertain what is being produced in their lives by the people who follow the ministry. Are they actually walking with God? Oh, but I'm not supposed to be a fruit tester. Jesus said he would know them by the fruit. Whoever said that is speaking by the spirit of the devil. I'm not a fruit tester. Jesus said you will know them by the fruit. The only way you know them by the fruit is to put the fruit to the test. Jesus gave this as a way to avoid deception. If anybody says there's not a fruit tester, back off. They're going to get deceived. That's nonsense. Total nonsense. It goes in the portion of scriptures constantly being mistaught. Do not judge unless you be judged. That's dealing with hypocrisy. What Jesus is saying, listen, woe to you, Pharisees, who judge people and do the same thing. That's the whole thing. They do the same thing. They're over there involved in a certain aspect. They're not living right, but they're nailing everybody else for not living right. Hypocrisy, that's what he was dealing with. Live right. Then you don't have to worry about judgment. Judge yourself and you shall not be judged. Said you're right. You are the test fruits. That's how you test authenticity. If you're not willing to put fruit to the test, you're going to fall for fraudulent all over the place. Clear cut and simple. That's one of the reasons we have in the last days the fulfillment of the prophecy. We have the children of the devil and the children of the God being raised simultaneously. And see that happening within your church. Why? For years, nobody's been testing the fruit. So they've been Satan has gotten his children in. They weren't testing the fruits. They got in undetected. They blended in so much you can't tell them apart. Now that you begin to tell them apart because the heat's being stirred up and the gold's going to the surface. You're seeing the dross and the gold being separated because of the heat coming up because while everything was going on. Um, but it was like that. Nobody was testing authenticity. Even Jesus said that in the last days there will be those working lying signs, miracles, false prophets. Lying signs, miracles, you can't judge them by their fruit. You got to know the authentic miracles of God. And he does do miracles. What? Get in the prayer, know who he is. Have him show you his miracles. Know the authenticity. Because everything God does is prophetic. Declares who he is. For instance, slain in the spirit. You get slain, you fall down. For a moment, you look dead and you get up. Death, burial, and resurrection. That actually points to the cross. God doesn't do it. He's giving you an example. The death, burial, and resurrection of Christ is being slain in the spirit. It's almost like you're going through the same process. It's like a mirror. Death, burial, and resurrection. Right? Or the straightening of the back. I come to straighten out the way you walk. That's what he came to do, straighten out our walk, make our walks right with him. That's the purpose of the cross. Again, it speaks of the cross. And God said, Jesus said that miracles would follow those who believe. She signs, miracles, and wonders, and nobody believes, something's wrong. Or the miracles will follow the preaching of the gospel. No, the gospel. The authentic gospel. If you've seen signs, miracles, and wonders, and you don't hear the gospel, something's wrong. Most Christians can't tell because they never study the gospel. They have no idea the gospel says. And this gets me. How do you not know the message that actually saved your soul? That doesn't make any sense. For instance, if you're saved by the cross is so precious to you. It is dear to you. You want to talk about the cross. You get excited because the cross is your redemption. The cross is your salvation. You have somebody coming into a church and he says he's a brother. Share them. Talk to him about the cross, the blessings of the cross. If he's offended, ooh, that's enough fruit right there. No person that's been saved by the cross, the finished work of Jesus Christ, would be offended by talking about it. That's a sure mark of authenticity. And that goes beyond the fruit. For instance, I heard a false testimony a while back. The guy was supposed to be a pastor, gave his testimony, blah 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 blah. Right? Here, the point where you realize you're a sinner and you need to be saved. That's part of your testimony. That's actually salvation. That was missing. Everybody's blaming, like, yeah, but the problem with this testimony is you actually didn't have the part where you actually got saved. It's a false testimony. Because the testimony is always about what God did. Because we carry his testimony. It's not our testimony, it's his testimony. He is the Christ, the Son of the living God. That's actually the testimony. That's authentic. That's when you testify. Yes, I've seen the Lord. He has changed my life. He is exactly who he said he is. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the great I am, the Alpha and Omega. That's a Christian testimony. I've heard for years stuff that actually weren't testimonies. They're about the person and not about God. I mean, there are testimonies, you explain your experiences towards God, right? There's testimonials and there's lying, a lot of lying going on. And you got to know the authentic in order to discern what is real and what is not. Um, but what I'm going to tell you is learn the authentic. In every area of your life, learn the authentic, right? You want a good doctor, learn what an authentic doctor is. Study it, examine it, find out what's real, find out somebody fits your perception of the real doctor, and find somebody who fits up to it. Study the authentic. In what area it is, that's how you know it's real. Put things to the test. Test fruit. What is it producing? Examine it, right? If they're saying they're producing one thing and their product's actually totally different, you know the line. It's not real, right? And that's why I leave you test the authentic. Never let something go wrong that isn't. Um, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. Always test the authentic. Without the authentic, you don't know anything else. Clear cut and simple. And that's the whole thing in a nutshell. Once you know the authentic, you can begin to find everything else. And don't be afraid to put fruit to the test. If somebody tells you I'm not a fruit tester, then let him go because he's going to be deceived. You have to test fruit. Now you're going to test something, test the authenticity of something, you actually have to test it. Right? That's what Jesus, the example Jesus was saying, given when he went to the fig tree. He was examining the fruit. When the fruit wasn't to his liking, he's cursing. You want good fruit, examine it. We should be able to eat from each other's fruit. Go to your brother, mercy, take that. Ooh, generosity, I can take that. Faith, I take that. We should be able to eat from each other's fruits. It's not that way in the body because there's no, the fruit's very bad. Why? Because we're not even supposed to correct our brother when he's in error. We're not supposed to do that. Well, we are our brother's keeper. If your brother's going the wrong way, it's your position to get him on the right road again. Why? Because you love him. It's a sad case when you have all this drive to go out and save the poor, the needy, and the downtrodden, and your brother can go to hell. Right? Jesus said, they will know you are my disciples if you love one another. When somebody goes astray or is going astray, you grab that street. That's the way it is. Test the authentic. Well, I'm going to be here every Saturday about 6 o'clock. I'm going to try to develop a regular schedule. Um, and it's been a little iffy because last week I was here and my internet went crazy. Pray for my internet connection, and I'll be here every week. Because I want to share, and I'm not sharing from book knowledge, I'm sharing from experiential knowledge. And that's all I'm sharing from. And everybody's welcome to come and comment and talk to me. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help, and I don't have all the answers. I'm searching out just like you guys. So test the authenticities. And if you find a preacher that is real, that's genuine, study him. Study him. Why? Because you have something to compare a fraudulent to. Once you know the authentic. The key is to know the authentic. That's why your time in the Word And in prayer is so important. You learning the authentic Bible. You're learning the authentic person of Jesus Christ. You're learning the authentic presence. Because there's a lot of stuff going on in church that's not authentic, right? Especially around worship. Yeah. Worship is living your life, right? Give your body over the sacrifice, give your body as living sacrifices, which is acceptable and pleasing unto God, which is your reasonable service of worship. Living with everything given over to God, that's what your worship is. Has nothing with cheering and jumping up and down. That's entertainment. When you come to church, you should be singing to God out of a purified heart. But you're not going to come to God living like a pig and then go to church on Sunday lie to him, which is highly dangerous because that's what Ananias and Sapphira were doing. They lied to the Spirit. That's what Peter told him before. I think it was Sapphira. Hey, the men who carried your husband out are right there to carry you out. Well, why did Satan fill your heart to lie? You don't lie to men, you lied to God. They lied to God and God struck them down. And that's one of the reasons we don't see the presence of God in our churches, because in the state we're in right now, if you were to show up in our churches, there'd be a lot of dead people. The thing is, they're misrepresented him. The goodness of God is great, but he's also severe. The God of love and mercy is also the God of justice and retribution. You can't separate him too. That's who he is. It's real. It's being real. And once you study him and you receive from him, you see him as he actually is. You see the severity of God and the goodness of God. And that's how you know the authentic preaching. It's balanced. You have the goodness and the severity, not this one-sided stuff you're going on. I mean, most Christians think Jesus is somebody you can just walk all over. He's not that way. He's not that way. Never been that way. Never will be that way. And it's highly dangerous thinking. We're talking about the same one who destroyed the world with a great flood because every thought in their head, every thought that man was having in his heart was continuously evil all the time. He wiped out the entire planet because of it. And we see Sodom and Gomorrah, lifeless down to the microscopic level for 6,000 years. God did that. Israel was totally lifeless in the state of Sodom and Gomorrah for over 2,000 years because they rejected Messiah, according to the prophecy of Christ himself. And you see the book of Revelations, Christ comes back and he literally turns the armies of the world into bird food. Weak little Messiah, think again. Consider the goodness and the severity of God. You gotta remember both because there's too many people lying through their teeth. He's a good God and he doesn't desire you to perish. That's true. Christ came to set you free. That's true. But he's nobody you want to be trifling with. I'm saying this, and it's scaring the daylights out of me. And the times I go preaching like this, I'm on my face. But remember, know the real McCoy. Then you won't be fooled for a fake. And that's the key. Know the real McCoy. Focus on the real McCoy. All right? Don't give in to titles or degrees, because that's a whole lot of nonsense. Look for the authenticity. And if you have trouble seeing authenticity, you have an ally. The spirit of truth. The pneuma aletheia. The breath of reality. Because Jesus said, he's there to lead you into all truth. Which real, which is being fake, who's put on the front. That's the way you have to discern at this point. Well, that's all I had for today. I hope this has helped you. God bless.